We're less than a month away from the kickoff of NFL season. We even have preseason games going on tonight. We've talked for months and months, or even if you're new to the best ball streets, we've been talking all sorts of different strategy. We talked about the basics this week. We've drafted teams. Now, let's just open it up. What questions might anyone have? We took some questions from Twitter. We took some questions from Discord. And if you have questions, bring them in to the chat here. We're going to talk all possible forms of best ball strategy right now. All right, guys, happy Thursday. It is really absolutely insane that we're kind of almost to the NFL season. It doesn't feel like that. Like, I remember we talked about this on Tuesday. If you didn't watch the Spike Week football show on Tuesday with myself and Rob Coakley, we had a lot of fun kind of going back over rehashing a lot of the basics of best ball. And it wasn't just like a super duper basics. I think that's actually the problem with a lot of like people really trying to get into the space. You like Google best ball basics and it's just like, oh, you take, your optimal lineup out of your 18 players, it's a 12-man draft as opposed to like actual strategy basics and like, how do I win at this thing? And I think it was really good. It was also helpful for me. And I think for Rob as well, just to kind of remind ourselves about how important some of those basics and everything are. But we're so close to the season that it was important to go over that. But now it's important to kind of start talking about anything and everything. At this point, we probably all have the players we like. We probably all have the structures that we like to draft our teams with, right? Maybe you're an early running back type of person. Maybe you're a 0 RB bro. Maybe you like the 3-quarter, but like to go 3 quarterbacks more than say someone like I does. Maybe you like late round tight ends. Maybe you absolutely really want to tackle elite tight ends. But all that stuff is like, even for new people, you're going to learn that as you draft, but you figure all that kind of stuff out. And there's been so much content about all that, right? But like, as you dive into all these drafts with only a month left to go, and this month you could just be doing your first draft today, or you could only have, a handful of drafts left to do. How do we kind of attack the strategy for this last month leading into the season? How do we handle training camp? How do we handle the preseason games, right? We have preseason action going on tonight. How do we kind of navigate this final month? And also thinking about, like yesterday, we had the Draft IQ show where I went over my 150 teams on DraftKings in the DraftKings Millie Maker, $5 Millie Maker. And like thinking about what you have in a certain tournament, right? What you've already drafted in Best Ball Mania, all these things play together. And so I think it's maybe even a little more fun just to kind of open things up and have an open, frank, honest conversation about strategy, everything that we all, might be thinking about. You guys might be thinking about something different than I'm thinking about. And I don't want to go over all the same things constantly all the time. And I don't want to just do draft streams constantly all the time. I want to have kind of some, not more meaningful. It's all meaningful, but it's important to set aside some time to be like, what are you guys thinking about? Or what am I just randomly thinking about that we can talk about with strategy? One thing out before we hop in, I see some of the questions and I have some of the questions on Twitter pulled up and ready to go is I did want to just briefly touch on, if you are still figuring out how you want to kind of spend your bankroll attack these best ball tournaments and everything here down the stretch. I'm not trying to guide anyone to any individual tournament site, whatever. Everyone has to make those decisions for themselves. But if you're strictly just trying to get into, especially if you're newer, trying to get into something that's a little bit more straightforward and is definitely going to be kind of the most plus EV tournament that is out there, because it's absolutely going to overlay a ton, is on Drafters. Go to drafters.com. They have their $20 best ball championship. They also do have a $2.22 tournament. So if you want to get like some practice reps in, that's probably the best tournament to do so. It's cumulative scoring, meaning you'll hear we'll talk about it today, I'm sure, talking about the playoffs, week 17, all these things that are so important on Underdog and DraftKings. But on Drafters, you just got to score the most points from week 1 to week 17. And so it's kind of a little bit more of a straightforward format. And I don't know, if I had to guess, it's going to get like maybe 75% full or something like that. So, you know, the money you put in there is already worth more money than, which is pretty rare in best ball, is already worth a little more money than before. And if you use promo code SPIKE or use the link that's down in the description, you can get a free ticket to that contest. They have, in my opinion, the best promo also going on in best ball. You deposit just $10, put in promo code SPIKE, or just go directly from the link beneath in the description, and you'll get a free ticket into that. So like, you can spend $10 and get a free ticket, and on it, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I think they have a product that's something that we can take advantage of over this last month, and that's something that I'm going to try to do. So let's hit some of the chat questions first, and then I'll hop over to the Twitter stuff. Well, first, Carlos says, it went way too fast. It feels like just yesterday I was drafting, in parentheses, the worst teams in best ball history, in the big board. Yeah, I do remember the big board here. I can share my screen, and we can just super quickly look at how awful my big board teams are. So it'll make you feel better, Carlos. Let me zoom in. If I go to the big board here, so you see I drafted 47 teams into the big board. I was trying to not go super duper crazy in the early contest, big board, super flex, and all that, because I knew that this summer was going to be absolutely wild and crazy. But let me just go to exposure. You see, I was taking, so my anti-Leonard Fournette case got ruined with the drafting of Rachaad White. I was taking a stand on Keyshawn Vaughn. Dallas Goedert was a guy I was really high on. Then, of course, they trade for A.J. Brown. Mitch Trubisky, whatever, so I don't mind. Terry McLaurin, I'm not really sure what I was thinking. KJ Hamler, okay, fine. Henderson, Sutton, Robbie, whatever. Corey Davis, I don't know. I was on a big Kyron Williams kick in the big board. And I mean, anytime you can draft 26% of the guy who ended up getting suspended for the year for gambling, that's always good. Had my late round tight end stuff going. Kylan Granson, Trey McBride. You know, we were having fun. Jarrett Patterson, dead. We really pissed away some money there in the big board. Let's see. Kiz K20 says, if you're maxing a tournament 150 entries, how many, if any, do you stray away from your standard constructions? Do you take 10 to 15% of them and just get nuts, especially in a smaller entry-free tournament? Excellent question. Absolutely excellent question. And I think this is something I see a little bit across the best ball space fairly frequently. And I actually have a fairly strong take on this. And it's kind of different for the two different questions that you asked. The first part being, if you're maxing, how many do you stray away from your standard constructions? And the first thing I would say to that is, it's actually different from your second question. And like, do you just get nuts? I would treat them separately. So actually, I can again use, I should have kept my screen share, because I can use kind of an example from actual teams that I have drafted. And I have the 150, because 149, because I'm saving one for a stream in the DraftKings Best Ball Millie Maker, right? So if I go to exposure and I look at my roster builds and team structures here, this basically is going to talk about what you're talking about. And point being, you see, you know, from a roster build perspective, I don't really stray away from, you know, You don't see 5 quarterback teams. There's there's one that didn't register. We'll have to get that fixed. But so there's this 1, 4, 6, 7, 3 that was probably an auto draft because I know that I don't take 4 quarterbacks. Maybe it's not, maybe not, right? 4, 6, 8, 2, 4, 6, 7, 3. Do have I actually just recently drafted this one. 2, 6, 11, 1 team. So I guess that would be your like getting nuts, but I don't view those necessarily as getting nuts. So like this team, it's one team and it is an elite tight end, probably Travis Kelce, with some early running backs, Travis Kelce and probably some early running backs and, weak wide receivers. So we just loaded up on wide receivers and said, we're just going to go solo Kelce. I think I actually posted this team to Twitter. So I'd have to go back and check, but that would be what someone would maybe consider going wild, but I don't consider that going wild. It is maybe straying away from what your standard construction would be. So I think to answer that first question, there are some teams where in 150 max, you'll see me doing that. I'll sprinkle in a little bit of solo Kelce, right? You see here, a couple of 1 tight end teams. It's probably Kelce. 2, 8, 9, 1, right? So like a 0 running back team with just Travis Kelce at tight end. That's probably straying away from your standard constructions. Here's a fun one, right? 2, 3, 12, 3. So take 3 running backs to start, 2 decent quarterbacks, and then you're just all wide receivers and tight ends the rest of the way. However, I don't consider those personally getting nuts. I would consider those pushing the standard constructions to the extremes, right? Because the couple of those were just like, do I attach Hayden Hurst to my Travis Kelce team or just take another wide receiver? That's really not, so okay, I'm taking a 0 in Kelce's bye week, and maybe there's a couple weeks where Kelce doesn't have a monster week that's hurting me, but not really, right? Like generally speaking, not really. So it's just kind of taking those standard constructions a little bit more to the extremes, right? The 2, 3, 12, 3 thing is like, okay, you went, maybe instead of taking the 4th running back, you took a wide receiver, right? I would maybe normally take 4 running backs on that team. I mean, you see here 3, 4, 11, 2, or if I scroll up a little bit, there's probably so like 2, 5, 10, 3 is like something more normal that I would do. Obviously, the majority of my teams are sitting here in these buckets: 2, 6, 10, 2, 2, 7, 9, 2, 2, 6, 9, 3 on DraftKings. Again, these are 20 rounds. So that's kind of where I live. And then just kind of tweaking and moving the chess pieces around to the different positional buckets a little bit, but not getting nuts. What I think some people will do is they feel like, oh, I've drafted so many teams, I gotta go crazy. Like I'm sick of drafting the same ones, but I gotta get crazy. I'm gonna draft a 5 quarterback team, or I'm gonna draft 6 straight running backs to start the draft and still take more, or I'm gonna draft 3 elite tight ends, or I'm gonna do something that is technically different and unique, but getting unique for the sake of getting unique, or getting nuts for the sake of getting nuts, is not helping you win at all. It's just making you, I guess, like feel excited again because you're bored about drafting the same teams all the time. But what people tend to forget is in any given tournament, even if you honestly draft hundreds or into the 4 figures of best ball teams, not dollars, teams, 1,000 teams, you will be surprised at how many combinations of players you do not get, how many stacks you do not get, or how few of them you get, that you'll look back when the season starts and you'll say, damn it, why did I do that silly Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts team when I could? Because now I don't have, we just did this yesterday on the show that I did, the Draft IQ show, where I pulled up, I'm 2 of my highest exposure running backs on DraftKings. We can see it over here. Saquon Barkley and I believe DeAndre Swift. Swift might even be higher. So I have 17% Swift and 25% Saquon, 2 of my highest exposure players. I only have 2 teams out of 150 that even have them together. And they're both 2nd round picks. So that's why, but I didn't go out of my way enough. I did it twice, but I didn't go out of my way enough to get them together. And so in my opinion, instead of like going nuts, to your point, and like doing something that's just like totally crazy, and honestly, like probably minus EV in the tournament just to be different, I would go through and do some of those things instead, because the 150 bullets that you have into the tournament is less than you think. Everybody thinks like, oh, it's just one or two teams, but you if you investigate your portfolio, you'll always go back and say, damn, I actually don't have enough of that combination, or I don't have enough of that structure. Maybe I wanted more zero running back. Maybe I wanted more elite quarterback or whatever. And you don't get it because you punted off some of those teams that you just didn't need to punt off, but you wanted to feel something. We all we wanted to feel something when it's 149. Good point. All right. I think we covered that one. Let's see. Yeah, glad to see somebody else got beat up pretty good on Keyshawn Vaughn. Yeah, this I posted day one BBM team, which was pretty fun. I can pull it up just so people can see, talking strategy about, not, you don't have to take this into account when you're drafting teams later, but it is like semi important to kind of think about. I'm trying to think of who the best player to search for is. Probably James Cook. I don't think I have a ton of James Cook. So if I look at James Cook, right? So I have three teams. I drafted this team here over here on day one of Best Ball Mania 3. And if you recall, day one was particularly funny because they didn't have ADPs for some of the rookies, and they were using old ADPs for a lot of guys who had risen up. And I just decided, so I drafted from the third spot and actually got Jonathan Taylor third. And then it was just one of those rooms where sometimes you get lucky, So I took Javonte, but then I get CD, at the 303, which is funny now when we look back at that, right? And then you look at just some of these other values. Miles Sanders, 15. So you can see the difference in his current ADP and where I got him. More than a round ahead of ADP. Rashad White, almost 4 rounds ahead of his ADP. James Cook, 70 picks, after current ADP. CD around. DJ Moore around. Mike Williams, almost 4 rounds. Gabe Davis, almost 3 rounds. Cortland Sutton, 60 picks different from his current ADP. Rondale Moore, a little bit canceled out by these two scrubs and Alberto, but Sky Moore in the 18th round, 123 picks after where he currently goes. And even old Bobby Tonyan, 2 rounds, right? So there was just like so much screaming value that happened to fall to me, and I kind of pushed my limits on like the Sky thing. I kind of wanted to see if it would work out this way. just to I'm making fun of the people who were drafting just to feel something. I was clearly drafting just to feel something with pushing Sky Moore to the 18th round, and James Cook to 171. But from a strategy perspective, it is somewhat important to understand in Best Ball Mania, a little bit less so in the DraftKings Millie Maker, but when you have these tournaments that are open for the whole summer and you have some of these nuances, and these players were going 4, 5, 6 rounds after where they're going now, right? Trey Lance is making his way on up to the 60s in ADP, and he was going at 110 or whatever back then. We're talking 4 to 5 rounds of movement on players. It is important to keep those things into account as we build out the rest of our teams. And yes, this one that I just talked about was BBM, obviously, as you saw, but the exposure I was walking through before, like with the Swift Saquon thing, was the DraftKings Millie Maker. Dark Sheep says, I'm thinking about becoming a snipe the QB the person is stacking right next to me person. There seems to be a lot of people that like to do that. Thoughts? Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that like to do that. I can't ever make heads or tails out of it, but there is a few things more tilting than that. So there's a perfect point to Kiz's original question, like, oh, do I get crazy on some teams? No, because you're just going to screw up. You're going to have auto picks. You're going to, your internet's going to go bad or whatever. You're going to have some teams that aren't as good as you want them to be anyway. And then you're going to have some teams that didn't work out like you wanted them to. You set up that beautiful Bengals stack, and some asshole in the 6th round who doesn't have a single Bengal on his team or a single Bill is like, I'm going to take Joe Burrow. and now you're with a team that you don't like as much. So I'm very anti like punting off teams doing crazy stuff. Given, if we could all draft, if it was the quarter arcade or something like that, and we could a quarter entry and we could draft hundreds of teams or something like that, then maybe it's a little different. But given the constructs we're in right now, that one I feel pretty strongly about. Johnny says, I've been doing 3-team super stacks on DraftKings. My crazy thinking behind it is at least one of them will really hit and the other will complement, but let all 3 battle it out all year. I actually don't mind this at all. I think it's a little bit better for, which I wrote about in the playbook for, small field type stuff on DraftKings. Let me... I'm too zoomed in. My menu's not working because I'm too zoomed in. When I go to the blessed, there we go. DraftKings single entry and small field. I wrote a little bit about this and how I think it's not only like interesting, I think it's pretty darn like strong in now, exactly how much do you want to super stack? So that you see team stacks, right? Final round so much smaller, we don't have to totally hit the nuts. I mean, when we get to week 17 of the $5 Millie Maker with 1,000 people in it, it's pretty much of a different game. But with, as you see, very small amount of teams in these final rounds of basically every other tournament on DraftKings, we can do some of those things like Johnny's talking about. And like, not only can we just like crush in our, if you just super stack the Bucks and the Bills last year or something like that, or even like the Rams, I'm trying to think of like some other teams. That the Chiefs are not really a great super stack team, but I guess if you somehow got Hill and Kelsey and Darrell Williams or something, but you know what I mean? Like you get those really great offenses and you super stack them up. The Packers even were a pretty good one. You can just crush through the regular season, and then because of the structure of the tournament being like, okay, you got to get out of your 12-team league, but then it's like beat 6 people in the first round of the playoffs, beat 8 people in the second round of the playoffs, and then the final round is like 10. It's like 10 players. I think I might have a couple of so like let me zoom. Like this one is the $12 single entry, right? So beat 12 people, 12 people, 12 people, and then the final is just 22 people. The even better one is as you move up in stakes a little bit here, we see a $200 single entry, right? Advance in the top 2 of your 12-team league. Then finish top 2 out of 6 in the second round. Then finish first out of 6 in the third round. And then you have just a 10-man final, and it's $50,000 to first place. Like not only is it like what Johnny's saying, like an interesting way to play those specific contests, I think it like might be like kind of optimal to do something like that. Ross says, sorry, let me get my water. Ross says, what are your thoughts on getting 2 top 12 QBs on the same team with viable pass catchers? Of course, yeah, with viable pass catchers. Ross was very smart to make sure and say, he's like, I'm not drafting a robust team when I'm doing this. Please make sure you know that. I think it's more than fine. It's actually something, it's a great bullet point for how we have to assess every year differently. Last year, this was trickier to pull off, right? So I need to just leave this damn screen share up. I don't know why I keep taking it down, but way too zoomed in. Good Lord. If I go to the Underdog tiered rankings, let's look at the top 12 quarterbacks, just top 10, top 12, whatever. Let's look at those quarterbacks, and we can kind of see, what type of talent we're talking about at quarterback. So from Josh Allen down to Matthew Stafford, actually like a really perfect top 12 is a really good choice here. You could go top 10 down to like Brady and Lance, but top 12 works. If you get beyond there, you get into Rodgers, Carr, Jones, Fields, Tua, etc. Cousins, who like they're okay, but the top 12 is definitely kind of a tier of its own if we assume Matthew Stafford's healthy. But last year, if you moved away from both wide receiver and running back, or you wanted an elite tight end, right? If you tried to start double dipping in those top, these guys all go in the top 10 rounds. If you wanted to even higher, a lot of the time Stafford started to fall a little bit, but in the top 9 to 10 rounds, if you wanted to take 2 quarterbacks, you were going to probably be locking yourself out of the upside you needed at running back, wide receiver, tight end. And now maybe you can do the late round tight end thing. You can do 0 running back, but the way the wide receiver craze went, and then just the lack every year from a running back perspective of players outside of the top 10 rounds or so that are like monster upside. Again, there's like contingent value running backs, right? But from a tight end perspective, there's no monster upside guys outside of those rounds. And the running backs are obviously mostly contingent value bets in those rounds. And then wide receiver, just the absolute superstars just don't really exist there. And we didn't have these pockets of the draft that we have this year where you're going to fall into what rounds. It'll happen in rounds 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 now, where you're staring down the barrel at like Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, maybe David Montgomery slips, AJ Dillon, Michael Thomas used to go here, doesn't go here anymore, DeAndre Hopkins, and like there's some receivers and running backs that are fine in that range, right? But it's like Miles Sanders, the Patriots running backs are like kind of there. Damian Harrison, Ramondre, who I like all these guys. I like Brandon Ayuk. I like the rookies, Treylon Burks and Drake London, whatever. But you're not in a spot where, like, if I don't take one of these guys, the next tier is dead. I'm screwed. And so I have been doing more of like Kyler Murray and Russ. Now, I'm not doing like Mahomes, Lamar, because I think those guys go in the tier where there is still, if we look over in, again, these are our tiered ranks. This is not this is not ADP. But actually, I can pull up ADP. Let's go to ADP by round and look at a specific round. Go to NFL. Let's look at Underdog. And let's look at what round are we talking about? 7. Let's go to round 7. So a perfect example. So Russ, right? We go to round 7. I took Kyler in the 6th. Let's just say I took Kyler in the 6th, or I took whatever, Lamar, Mahomes, whoever. I come to the 7th round on Underdog, and I say, Hunter Renfrow, Kadarius Toney, Antonio Gibson, Miles Sanders, Devonta Smith, who I like. You'll see it's higher in the rankings. Alan Lazard, Tony Pollard, of course I like. Christian Kirk and Brandon Ayuk. Or I can get Russ. I can get Brady. I can get Burrow here. And I might already have a Broncos wide receiver. I might already have Evans or Godwin. I might already have Higgins or Chase, right? And now I got the elite quarterbacks, and I'm not sacrificing anyone in this range that is like, that you're like killing yourself, that you missed out on, right? This was like Debo last year. This was Debo range last year. And I don't think that exists here. Again, I like some of these guys, some more than others, and some of them fit certain structures, etc. Right? I have a good clip of Tony Pollard. I have a good clip of Miles Sanders. I like Miles Sanders. I like Devonta Smith. I like Brandon Ayuk, Christian Kirk. I know Rob likes. Some people have made a case for Hunter Renfrow. If you do like Alan Lazard, there's reasons for these guys, but no one here is just like, man, if I don't get them, I'm going to be locked out of wide receiver. Because then you go to like, right, let's go to round 8. We go to round 8, and it's like, well, now we get to the rookie wide receivers, right? There's Olave, there's MVS, Sky, Treylon, right? We get to round 8, and it's like, if I didn't get Hunter Renfrow, I think I'll be okay with Chris Olave or Treylon Burks or Sky Moore, But it's like, okay, Dak is now in this tier, right? Well, there's Stafford or whatever. But I think this is a very, very unique thing. And I'm glad you asked that, Ross, because it's not something that I really would have considered or I really would have thought I'd be saying now at this point. But the market has really shifted into this weird range where like that 7th, 8th, 9th. Let's look at the 9th, the 9th round ADP here. Yeah, so I mean, geez, look at the 9th. Zach Ertz, Claypool, Cook, Lockett, Dawson Knox, Damian Harris, Russell Gage, Robert Woods. Is there anybody there that you're like, I can't take Stafford over? Or if like Dak falls, I can't take them over these guys? So it's not like I go in saying I got to get 2 top 12 quarterbacks. I'm definitely taking 2 guys in the top 9 rounds. But if it works out that way, I have done it, and I'm doing it more frequently than I thought, honestly, I ever really would because of these dynamics. Rob says, should I try to stack as much as possible or should we try to stack as much as possible or stack our QBs or both as long as we don't? So stack the 1v1, meaning like week 17 correlation, like stack a week 17 game, basically, I think is what you're asking. Or like load up your quarterbacks with the pass catchers or do both. The answer is definitely both, but it's not, you don't reach. We talked about this on Tuesday as well. I really recommend checking out the Tuesday show, NFL. It's titled NFL Best Ball Basics, myself and Rob. And we actually covered this a little bit for quite a while at the start, but it is basically when you start the draft, it's like a decision tree, right? There's a hierarchy to your decisions, and you start with like a projection and a ranking. And so you have your rankings. I was just showing you it was our tiers, our positional tiers, but we have rankings. That's where I start. When I come on the clock, I look at my rankings. Theoretically, I'm picking the setting aside everything else, I'm picking the highest player on that list. But there are other things down below on that decision tree. Roster construction, like we've talked about, right? If I have 7 running backs, if I took 3 running backs to start and I get to the 4th round and the highest ranking player is a running back on me, I need to knock him down and start looking to the other positions. It's a similar thing for stacking, both week 17 and like you mentioned, stacking with your quarterbacks. When I draft Joe Burrow, the Bengals players get a boost within my rankings, right? Not like a huge boost. It's a really slight boost. So when I reach, I don't take Tyler Boyd if I have guys projected in like tiers ahead just because I have Joe Burrow. But if I reach a tier where all these guys are the same, that correlation now makes him trump those other guys in that tier, right? I reach whatever tier Tyler Boyd is in. Let's go to Tyler Boyd. We get to tier 6. Perfect example of this tier, right? I've drafted Joe Burrow. Maybe I've drafted Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. And I get to this tier of the draft. Chase Claypool, Russell Gage, MVS, Amari and MT and Tony are probably gone. But, so these guys are around here in this tier. There's Russell Gage is on the board and Chase Claypool's on the board and Tyler Boyd's on the board. They're all in the same tier. As you see, I actually have Boyd behind those guys, oddly enough. But the correlation, because I've drafted Joe Burrow, Tyler Boyd gets a boost. He moves up here ahead of these guys, right? Because on this team, that correlation makes him more impactful within a flat tier. And so it's balancing those things. We definitely want to stacking is extremely important, but we want to do it in a smart manner. I don't want to just force all the correlated players into my lineup together. I want to do it when it makes sense and I'm not sacrificing upside based on how I have the players projected and ranked. let's see here. Modog says, I like the idea of at times only take one at a position. Gutsy, but might be worth a try from time to time. I definitely like it at the tight end position a little bit. Like if you get your Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, I don't really like it that much. A ton with Waller and Kittle. I think they're in a fairly different tier. Kelsey's the best one to do it with for sure, obviously, because you're all, there are going to be weeks, of course, that you lose out on, 5 or 10 points or something like that at the tight end position. But like, how many times? Probably not very many. Travis Kelce's not having very many games where he scores 2 points. And then in that week, not only do you need Travis Kelce to have like that total floor week, you need the guy that you were probably taking in like the 17th round to score such a meaningful amount of points that you care. And then you obviously have the bye week, which is the same thing. People are so disingenuous about those single tight end. They're like, I can't have the same bye week for those guys because I'm missing out on 15 points. Like, what fucking tight end are you draft? Like, what 17th round tight end are you drafting with Travis Kelce that is getting you 15 points? Only 2 tight ends averaged 15 points a game last year, or 0. It's like you're missing out on like 4 or 5 points. You're praying for 10, but you're probably missing out on like 5 points. So like, that's why I don't really do it at quarterback. I do think it's viable at quarterback, but I don't personally choose to do it. I just don't think I need to get that fancy. But at tight end, depending on how your draft goes, like the one that I was talking about with my solo Travis Kelce team on DraftKings, I took Travis Kelce, and my RB1 was Melvin Gordon. So for that team, getting to like 8 running backs was really important. I needed all the dart throws. I just needed everybody to get me points at running back. Losing out on that 6 to 10 points in PPR at that tight end position for 1 week, that's not going to make or break me. But finding, last year's Sony Michel or Rashad Penny or Devin Singletary, that is going to make or break me. And so it's a balancing act from each team. Yeah, David says, don't know if it makes me a donkey, but I never go into a draft with a plan for a certain structure. It all depends on how the first couple rounds go, if anything falls into my lap. Definitely. Totally agree. As Hacker says, that makes you a sharp drafter. Modog, usually see how the first 2 to 3 rounds go and plan from there. Sometimes I have an intention, but make sure to stay flexible. Yeah, I think there are times where you probably have an intention. You know what I mean? I do this. I just recently wrote, if you haven't read it, I just wrote an undrafted tight end strategy piece. It's the headline article on the website. And so I've been a little, that consumed my mind for a couple of days as I was writing it and thinking about it and testing it out and stuff in drafts. And so you do like maybe have a little bit of intent on doing that. But even then, there were a couple times where I'm like, I'm going to do this because I want to try it out because I'm writing about it. And then Kyle Pitts falls to me and like at like the 402 or something, and I can't help myself but to take him. I'm like, God damn it! And trying to research for this article, but that goes to the point, right? Like you can set out to try to have some intent and think about some different strategies and stuff. But if the draft falls in a certain way, right? I love Kyle Pitts. He's one of my favorite players in the entire player pool this year. So if he falls to me, I'm happy to abandon that idea that I had. Okay. I know I'm a little behind on the comments. I promise you I will catch up. Please, Starkindler says, wasn't there a very recent blurb on Vaughn that had him as the second right now? Probably because they're holding Rachaad White back, but please don't tease me. Don't dangle the carrot in front of me and make me think that my 47% Keyshawn Vaughn in the big board is like not totally dead. Love this question. Hacker says, at what point do you get different with early round combos? It's much easier to try in tournaments that are not open for long. Yep. First thing I was going to say, but has to be really important in these huge tournaments. Exactly. There are 2 different like points to this, right? Where we can do it easiest. And it is more, I want to say instant leverage. That's obviously not the exact right word, but you probably get what I'm saying. I can like guarantee the leverage in the puppy 3 that's only open for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, because I just know ADP is just not going to shift, particularly on those first few rounds, enough to where I can't project like, low ownership or whatever you want to call it on certain combinations at the early parts of the draft. So it's more projectable, I would say, in the, the puppies or whatever, or like when DraftKings opens a single entry contest, that's the same thing. Like sometimes a $100, $200 single entry lasts a few days on DraftKings. And so you do know, there's a little bit different quirks to DraftKings, of course, but you do know within those contests that fill more quickly that you can like be more intentional about it, and it's kind of more of a certainty. However, from a pure like raw leverage perspective, it's more impactful having unique combinations in the big tournaments, right? More people we have to beat means more leverage we need, more levers we need to pull to when I got to pass 500,000 people as opposed to 50,000 or 100,000, I need a lot more things to go my way. And so I haven't forced a ton in Best Ball Mania of getting different early combos. That being said, I'm not even halfway done with my BBM teams. I wanted to be halfway before camp got here. It just didn't happen. I'm at like 57 teams. So I haven't forced it much yet because I have kind of stopped drafting BBM for the very short period of time here. So, for like, if you were to look at my portfolio, there isn't a ton. I've done it a couple times. I'll do it with CD Lamb a little bit in the late second round. And so what I will say is, in tournaments like the puppy, I'm absolutely intentionally doing some of these things. I still want to get, I don't want to fade the best picks just to fade the best picks. But like, for instance, I know Hacker's really on Saquon, as are a lot of people that I know. And if you're really on Saquon, I want to figure out ways to get Saquon with everybody up there. So I'm going to be very intentional about it in the puppy and stuff, because like you say, you can pretty much predict where Saquon's going to go for the whole thing, and I don't have to think of too much about it. In Best Ball Mania, it's different beast, right? Saquon was going in like the middle of the third round. Now he's probably going to get up to the 1-2 turn by the time it closes. So I don't force it too much early on. I think there are certain situations and certain players we can be intentional about it. CeeDee Lamb was actually one of them. Like when you think about CeeDee Lamb or players like him, or try to identify players like him, it's like, think about what would have to happen for him to rise or fall in ADP. It's like there's like no scenario in which he's like gonna surpass Diggs and Devontae in ADP. Like, I guess maybe Devontae he could pass, but like at that point it's still only a couple spots of ADP. He's never going to pass Diggs. He's obviously never going to pass Kelsey and the superstar wide receivers. So there's not much upward momentum. It's just really a couple running backs he could pass. And then downward, who's going in front of him? Debo? Evans? T? Like, that market's not going to put T at the 1-2 turn and Chase at the 106 or 5 or whatever. So you think about those kinds of players, and I'll be intentional about doing with them. Do Saquon CD is a great one. It's like, actually in BBM, Saquon's not a good one. Let's say Swift C, or right guys that go in. That Swift is another one, but at the running back position, not easy for him to fall too far again, just because of the profile that he is and the type of drafter that likes DeAndre Swift. But he also is just not going to get, a part-time running back on the Detroit Lions. It's just not going to get to like the 108 or whatever. And so thinking through the types of players, I'm more willing to do it in Best Ball Mania. And so at what point do I do it? I'm very deliberate about the types of players I would do it for early in the season, and then, or early in the draft season. And then later on, if you've been drafting all summer, right, we're going to get in a week or two, 2-3 weeks, definitely at the end of August or early September, obviously, we're going to be so close to the end that we pretty much know the ADP ranges for everyone. We can look them up. We were just looking at some of the ADP tools that we have. You can look up the ADP that every single player's been at, but you can also just know it from having drafted and start to identify those later in the draft season. Let's see. Yeah, I guess the puppy's about to fill soon. Absolutely do not. We're not doing this. The Cup JJ thing is very funny because I like I made a tweet for anyone that didn't see it. I made a tweet about that. I think it's wild that Justin Jefferson has passed Cup in ADP, and it's not because it literally I couldn't love Justin Jefferson more. I absolutely fucking love Justin Jefferson. I have tried to take him at times, maybe even ahead of Cup, because I want to have a stand on Justin Jefferson. No one needs to sell me on Justin Jefferson. My take was, we are in a market that until August of last year refused to not take every running back under the sun in the first 3 or 4 rounds. Right? We couldn't even get wide receivers into the first round. Nonetheless, the wide receiver who had the greatest fantasy season of all time of modern NFL history, the dude has had, I believe Gretsch was the one who I heard had the best wide receiver fantasy season since 2000. Since 2000, had the best wide receiver fantasy season, and now Justin Jefferson's going ahead of him. That's crazy. That's crazy. I'm not even saying it doesn't make sense. I'm saying it's crazy when you line up all those things, especially when you think about the fact that it's because people are saying Justin Jefferson is getting a McVay coach. Kupp has fucking McVay and a better quarterback. And it's and he just did that. We're like, well, Jefferson's going to be Kupp. But if he's going to be Kupp, doesn't that say the Kupp's pretty good too? And he's already done it. I love Jefferson. So it's just funny that the market is, and we pick and choose the market, right? Picks and chooses when they say this, like the whole skate to where the puck is going is so funny because I like to use it. But it's yeah, but not everybody does that. Not everybody, not every situation. People like Joe Mixon. Why the fuck does Joe Mixon go with the 1-2 turn? No one's skating to where the puck is going on Joe Mixon. It's the opposite. The team has told us Joe Mixon is not going to play third downs, and he's going to be a part-time running back. Last night, if you watch Ship Chasing, Sean Siegel called Joe Mixon like a 4th-round pick, and nobody's saying shit about Joe Mixon. He's not falling. The market hasn't figured that one out yet, right? But we're dropping Cooper Kupp. We're not dropping Joe Mixon. We're not dropping Derrick Henry. But we're dropping Cooper Kupp. It's crazy market we're in now. Let's see. All right, sorry, I'm so far behind on the chat. I missed the bots. Sorry, guys. Let's see here. Consigliere says, and I apologize if I missed any of your questions. Ask them again, or I'm a little behind on the chat. Consigliere says, what are any/all the playoff tournament quarterbacks you're willing to do? Ooh, good question. You're willing to do unstacked. I have a Hurts Lance team. I plan on leaving unstacked except for Quez last pick. You can also take Danny Gray or Jawan Jennings in the last round too, if you want to stack either of them. I think it's a great question. I'm open to unstacked quarterbacks. Hurts, Lance, and probably some of the shitty guys. Daniel Jones. I'm open to Daniel Jones, Hurts, Lance. I think Kyler and Lamar for sure. For sure, Lamar. Kyler is kind of on the fence. I'd be on the fence about Kyler. And outside of that, I really I guess it's more so about the guys. If I draft Tom Brady Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, which I don't draft those guys very much. Derek Carr, Justin Fields, I'd be happy to have unstacked. It's more so about I want to make sure Patrick Mahomes, I'm absolutely stacking Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen is so expensive that even though he's an awesome runner, I would absolutely make sure I have him stacked, even if I got to do, RIP Jamison Crowder at the end or Khalil Shakir or something like that. I would still opt to do so. But the one thing I will say is I'm okay having the Trey Lance and the Jalen Hurtses of the world unstacked, but I still want them stacked. And it's because even if you are rushing a ton, like I do, and I think Hurts and Lance's like peak value is coming from their rushing. Even if you are rushing a ton, if you're going to go win me a turn, like they're not going to run for 100 yards and 3 touchdowns and not throw. Like it's just generally not how, football plays out for a quarterback. Is it possible? Sure, I guess. But Lamar, Lance, Hurts would be the guys that I would be okay doing it. And like I said, Daniel Jones, but his is more so because he's cheap and runs and is a shitty thrower. But I still kind of want to have a partner with those guys because the true ceiling is unlocked with the passing and the rushing combined. Now, I skinny stack those guys most of the time. Lamar, Hurts, Lance. I skinny stack them most of the time. And so to your point on your example here, I would be fine having Hurts, Quez, Lance, Danny Gray, or Juwan Jennings or whatever. Or Lance Ayuk is probably one of my highest exposure stacks across all of best ball for that reason. But I do still think you want to have, if possible, you want to have the one partner in the stack that can really raise that ceiling, because then it's just one less thing you got to get right. Trey Lance throws 3 touchdowns, 2 of them go to Brandon Ayuk. He has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in the final, and Lance runs for 2. Lance is the highest scorer, and Ayuk is making your team and helping you win $2 million. All right. I missed. The other question from Consigliere is obviously week 17 is important, but I'm doing 20 in the puppies and the minis. Is week 16 better as a gets you paid to build your bankroll? It's always a difficult question. I know some people are more into week 16 than I am, and I totally get the point. Osmo put out an article that based on some basic math that he ran week 16, a point in week 16 was just ever so slightly more valuable to your expected value than a point in week 17, which I get. But I think you can have your cake and eat it too, basically, is what I'm saying. What he also said, like people have cited that article, a good clip, and he didn't say that week 17 isn't important. He just said that week 16 might be undervalued, basically. And I think that's more than it's a very reasonable math equation to run through your head. The difference is that, to be frank, if I were trying to, the best way to build a bankroll is a big finish. You're getting to, even getting to the final, like especially on, the puppies and DraftKings and stuff like that, and like the DraftKings Millie, from a raw dollar perspective, is really very small. You can lose money making the final. And so it's one of those things where if you really want to build a bankroll, like it's kind of like, I come from a DFS background, right? I still do DFS work for Roto Grinders. If you play DFS, NFL DFS, I host the final Sunday morning show on Roto Grinders, 11:30 Eastern. But I come from that DFS space, and how I built my bankroll, how everyone I knew built their bankroll, wasn't like min cashing at a high rate, which is basically what the week 16 thing is saying. Get me there. Give me across the min cash, and then I'll see what happens. How you get there is the big score. You build the bankroll from the big score. Now that's tougher in best ball because, right, DFS we can do every day or every week, depending upon the sport. But in best ball, at least luckily now, we do have a lot more options. We have a ton of tournaments, right? Even at lower stakes, we have a ton of tournaments that we can play across multiple sites. We don't really do FFPC here, but there is FFPC. There's cash games. If you really want to build a bankroll through best ball, you can play cash games, but go on FanDuel or Yahoo or something like that and play cash games. But if I'm playing tournaments, the way you build your bankroll is finishing high, and that means week 17 is very important. Let's see. Yeah, fuck off, Tony. Just hit first. Just get first. It's easy. Yeah, it's easy. Let's see. Lundar says, say you have a medium best ball budget, maybe 2K. Would you play fewer of the $25 plus contests like BBM, or try to max things like the DK Millie and the puppies, or just personal preference? Yeah, it's definitely personal preference. So I want to start there. 100% it's personal preference. However, I would push people, and this is funny because, again, I just talked about, I'm glad I came to this question because, again, I come from the DFS space, and where I built my bankroll in DFS is not the lower stakes stuff. I'm not a good multi-entry player in DFS. I built my game around playing in smaller field, higher stakes tournaments. And so I'm actually playing in the stuff against, the best players in the world, the luxury box and the wildcat and those kinds of, the silver slugger in baseball and all that. And, playing those contests, which in turn means I'm playing against the best players in the world, but I spent my entire time like kind of being able to predict what they do better. And then, had some wins in the smaller field stuff. And so I've, from the DFS side of things, been more of a less lineups, smaller field type thing. In best ball, I would do the opposite. I think it's a very different game than DFS. And if I were trying to enjoy my $2,000 best ball budget or $200 best ball budget, I want to have as many teams as possible because you have a lot of different takes and you only get one season to see them play out, right? In DFS, it's like if I go into week 1 and I'm like, we're rolling Chiefs Cardinals stack, baby, and it fails, I could play Showdown on Sunday night. I could play Showdown on Monday night. I get the week 2 slate in 6 days. Like it's not a big deal, if I whiff. In best ball, it's like if I only draft a couple of teams and they whiff, because I like to take stands. And Tony's in the chat. He's one of the bigger stand takers, and it worked out pretty well for him. Won, 7 figures last year. Liam did the same thing and won 7 figures last year. I like to take stands and stuff. And so I want to have more shots. I want to have more shots at it. And so I would be doing the DK Millie. The DK Millie is a really good one to give yourself $5, for $750, or you don't have to max it, for $500 out of that 2,000, get a shot at $1 million against really soft competition. That's what I would do. And that would be my lottery ticket type stuff. And then I would do the puppies, and I probably do the $2 on drafters and stuff like that. Right. The 20 maxes on DraftKings. I would do those kinds of things and just like get as many teams as possible, because if you have an edge, even if you're only spending X amount of dollars, if you have an edge, I want to get as many teams to build up that edge over as possible. Would it be wild if Cup had another season like last year? No, it would not. If the reason that Justin Jefferson is going to be better, I don't argue that Justin Jefferson is better than Cooper Kupp. Actually, I kind of think he is better than Cooper Kupp, but it's like by a thin margin, relatively speaking. And so if the reason that Justin Jefferson is so valuable is because he's really good and he's now in the Cooper Kupp role, wouldn't that mean that, yes, of course, Cooper Kupp can do what he did again? Because we're drafting Justin Jefferson because of what Cooper Kupp did. Let's see here. Yeah, there's a reason baseball is all home runs and strikeouts these days. Cheers, Lundar. Chief X says, if Lamar scored to the quarterback, naked quarterback question, if Lamar scores outside of Andrews and Bateman, it's most likely his legs. So I feel you don't really miss. Only thing I would say is that that's what we project to be the most likely right now. But NFL seasons don't always work out like that. I actually am going to take a good clip of Isaiah Likely as a late round undrafted tight end. I started really smashing him at the end of DraftKings drafts, and I really wish I had more. I think there's absolutely a reason that he's getting hype. I think he's a talented football player, and he could absolutely score 2 touchdowns at the tight end position. And being at the tight end position is like even more valuable. And then he has the crazy contingent upside if something were to happen to I didn't even realize this, Quan. Really good catch. I didn't realize I punned the Likely thing, but I do really like Likely because I think he's just at the tight end position offers value and then has crazy contingent value if Mark Andrews, right? If Andrews and Bateman are not healthy, it's not going to be them, and it doesn't have to be just Lamar's legs without him. I also like James Prochet. Maybe you prefer Devin Duvernay or Tylan Wallace. I prefer Prochet, but it could Prochet could catch a bomb or two from Lamar. Same thing with Duvernay. So I wouldn't lock myself into just those guys because we project them to be, the volume hogs in the offense. 2 years ago, KJ Hamler had like 2 for 90 and 2 or whatever in week 16 or week 15 it was then that got Justin Herzig into the final round of Best Ball Mania 1, which he then obviously won, but he never would have got there without KJ Hamler. And something like that can absolutely happen with one of these guys. Plus, if the late round guy pops, if the Isaiah Likely, if the James Prochet, if the Devin Duvernay pops, right? Maybe they're just a really good player. Like, it's absolutely possible that they're just a really good football player. It's not likely, but it's possible. And if it does, then it just elevates the offense too. And I want that guy. I did. We've been talking for too long. I did want to really quick go over a couple of the Twitter questions. I meant to get to these before. I'll try to rapid fire because a couple of people had some Twitter questions. My wife, of course, on here asking when she's going to come on, which the answer is never. Matt says, would love to hear you talk through your view on drafting players after their ADP is jumped. Yeah. This might be the most difficult question to answer because there's no real true right answer. The first thing I'll say is, for me, when we get a situation like the Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson thing last year, or a few years ago, we got Tyreek Hill back in the draft days. Tyreek Hill was set to be suspended, then did not get suspended, and went from like the 11th and 12th round to the second round. Those guys, I do not draft. That's my personal opinion. I think it also matters, obviously, like now. So we're talking, right, and 50% of Best Ball Mania has filled. We're to the point where there's been so many entries with guys at certain costs that when you get huge leaps, right, 10 rounds, 8 rounds, that I don't think we should draft those guys. Someone's going to draft them. I'm gonna let other people draft them. Hopefully I've gotten my shares. The reason that you draft early is because you want to be the guy that got Darrell Henderson in the 13th round. Don't turn around and maybe you didn't. You're like, damn it, I got to get Henderson now. It's like you just make him a fade. The thing that people miss in this conversation is, like, more often than not, right? We joke about the guy you need. He's gonna be the guy you need. More often than, like, the likelihood that anyone is the guy you need is so fucking low that, like, just make that guy a stand. You're fading him. Like, if you didn't draft Darrell Henderson last year and he rose to the 4th round, just don't fucking draft him. And he's What are the odds that Darrell Henderson, like, you can't make money in best ball without Darrell Henderson last year? Like, they're so slim, it doesn't even matter. So just move on to the next thing. And so the difficult part is not that one. The difficult part is that this is definitely a fair point, Rob, trying to talk through not drafting Julio. My not drafting Julio, I really honestly don't care about. He's old. If I lose to Julio, it's fine. Now Rob threw me off my game. But the difficult part is not the guys that jump because of, an injury or something like that. It's the guys that rise just from market sentiment, right? I can't even think. I guess, rookies. This will happen to rookies sometimes. I actually don't even know who like the biggest ADP risers are. But somebody that rises 4 rounds or whatever, just because the market preseason hype or whatever, catches some long touchdowns. Marquez Callaway was partially an injury, but I always think of Marquez Callaway last year, right? Lights up the preseason, and Michael Thomas is out and shoots up to the 8th round or whatever. Yeah. Also a great point from Hacker. If you faded Henderson there in that 4th round and just spent those picks on Kupp instead, you probably would have done all right. The guys who ADP has jumped like a couple rounds, like I don't worry about it. I'm not saying that's right. I definitely don't have all the answers. It's a very difficult question to answer. But if a guy MVS, Sky Moore, Wandale's probably going to move up here, right? Pacheco's going to move up. Those kinds of guys are going to move up. I don't really care. I don't have a great line that I would say like, oh, if he moves up this much, I don't think you should treat it that way. But generally, you have a good feel for like, it's the Henderson thing of last year. He shoots up 8, 9 rounds, shoots up 3 rounds or whatever. Even then, I don't really care because there's so much other stuff that changes in the market. But there's not so much. There's other stuff that changes to offset, the guy that was going in the 13th round, going in the 10th, or the guy that was going in the 18th, going in the 15th. But there's probably not enough to offset the guy going in the 13th, going in the 4th, because the more you rise into earlier rounds is more substantial it is, right? And that's kind of the difference, is that when you rise from the 13th, like 4th round picks was Cooper Kupp last year, right? Rising from the 13th to the 10th is like, that's generally like almost like one big old tier anyway. Definitely like the 15th and the 18th. He was undrafted. Now he's going in the 15th. Romeo Dobbs. He was undrafted. Now he's going in the 15th. Can't take him. Why the fuck not? They're all the same. It's like 15th, 16th, 17th. It doesn't really matter. But when you rise from those rounds to the 4th, 5th round, like now you have to take him over Lamar Jackson, not over Daniel Jones, right? So it's kind of that is how I tend to think about it. I'm interested in you guys' question. Let's do that one last. Let's do Jenks question last. We're gonna avoid my wife's question. Oh, and then from Nick, how badly will people overdraft Pierre Strong with the James White news? I mean, I hope not. Pierre Strong, I think, is the very last running back in my rankings. I might bump him up a little bit, but like, I'm not really interested in him or Tymont, honestly. I guess Tymont, we talked about this in Discord a little bit today. Tymont is a guy who I think you can draft on DraftKings. You can for sure draft on Drafters late, but some people were kind of pitching that he has a little more upside than maybe I'm seeing. I don't see it. As far as I know, that they still have Damian, Ramondre, Pierre Strong, and Kevin Harris on the team. So like Tymont's not ever going to be a goal line back. He's not ever. They may never give him a carry, and that's okay because he can catch some passes in the James White thing. And I really like Mac Jones, but like we're remembering James White because he played with Tom Brady. Ty Montgomery is A, not as good as James White, and B, not playing with Tom fucking Brady on Super Bowl champion Patriots teams. So I'm just not very interested in the James White and the shittier version of James White on a shittier team. So we'll leave with this. Perfect one to end with. Shout out Jenks for this question. Who's going to be on the winning Best Ball Mania 3 team this year? I have a few takes. I'm interested in what you guys think. Something that I have been pretty adamant about is actually the Cardinals and Falcons game. I think that is the game that is actually probably the most appealing outside of Kansas City and Denver in Week 17. I obviously really like the Rams-Chargers game, but you have to factor cost in, right? And when you factor cost in, I think that the Falcons-Cardinals game is the most appealing out of all the games other than Denver and Kansas City. And on the Cardinals-Falcons side of things, it's a lot more easy to kind of figure out who it's going to be. For me, I really like Hollywood and I really like Kyle Pitts. Those are my favorite targets in that game. Those are two big stands that I'm taking, and I sure hope that Kyler, comes along for the ride with a big old, 40 ball in the championship game. But those are kind of the guys that I really, really, really believe in. Jamar Chase is coming up in the chat. Najee, of course, from Tony. I like that Gabe and Amon-Ra as second rounders next year. Gabe obviously is, an honorable mention for me on the list, but that was too lazy if I went there. Nico Collins. There's a fun one. Here we go. Nico Collins and Zay Jones both score 2 touchdowns in Week 17 and make the back end of the BBM3 roster the winner. Yeah. Mackenzie's on Pitts and Nuke London, so we're on the same. Saquon is the RB1 for the Chiefs. Love that. And then Dakota does ask, how are you liking the Bears-Lions game? Sneaky shootout potential? Yes, I sure hope so. The Bears are going to stink, but Bears-Lions is not a lot of defense. And actually, the Lions at least should put up some offense. So get some Fields, Mooney, Kmet, Velus Jones, garbage time against the Lions. When it's going to be Lions Seahawks from last year is Bears Lions. Obviously love the old Broncos Chiefs. I will say that's a good one. I didn't want to say Gabe because it was kind of too lazy and clearly my brand. I'm going to say MVS and Javonte. I'm going to say Melvin is hurt or not as much of a factor by then. Javonte is playing most of the snaps. And, it's later. The weather's maybe not super ideal at that point in the season in that part of the country. So we're riding Javonte a little bit, but MVS catches two long bombs. Exactly. That's what we're talking about. GA says Aaron Jones or Dalvin gonna run all over in the snow. This is true. Melvin's also hurt already. So it's Javonte. It's Javonte season. All right. Thank you guys. This was a lot of fun. Be back tomorrow. We're going to draft the drafters team. We got to get back into the drafters streets. We're going to be drafting all over the place over this last month. Drafters, DraftKings. Obviously, Underdog got a special guest for Monday joining me on the stream and fired up to start firing away at the rest of these. I told you guys I have been holding on. I got my 150 done in the DraftKings million. I've been kind of holding off on what I'm going to do with BBM. We're about to start firing back at BBM. So I'm excited to get back into it. Excited to stream another draft tomorrow. This was a ton of fun. Really appreciate you guys bringing all the questions. Tons of awesome questions that help me think through these things too. But have a wonderful evening. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.